The space station hung quiet above Valari Prime, turning slowly over the silver-blue world below. Every window showed the same view, a soft swirl of clouds and twin moons. Hanging close to each other like watching eyes, Ethan had never seen a world so peaceful. But that peace didn't last long. It started with a warning message that flashed on every screen across the campus. Lockdown in effect. Note exit, entry until further notice. The galactic broadcast repeated the same line in 20 languages. The students around him panicked. Ships stopped flying. Port shuttles froze in orbit, and the long glass halls of the university went silent. Ethan was a human exchange student, one of the first, allowed to study on an alien world after Earth joined the Galactic Union. He had come to learn advanced reactor engineering, not to be locked inside a dorm room with no idea when it would end. His roommate, Sura, was a Valari tall, graceful, and quiet. Her skin looked like smooth glass with faint silver lines under the surface, and her long hair shimmered faint blue under light. Most humans found Valari appearance strange, but Ethan thought she looked like living crystal, fragile but strong at the same time. At first, they kept busy. They cleaned the dorm, cooked together, watched old Earth movies that Sura never understood but still laughed at. When he tried to explain sarcasm, she tilted her head and said, "Humans enjoy words that mean the opposite of what they say." Strange. He grinned. "Yeah, we call it humor." The first week of lockdown felt like an unexpected holiday. The air filters hummed softly, and the artificial sunlight through the windows shifted on schedule. But by the second week, its isolation began to feel heavy. News channels spoke about the virus, a spaceborne organism that passed between different species through energy resonance. Nobody knew how it worked. The Galactic Council ordered a full planetary lockdown. No one could leave. Ethan tried to stay positive. He made a routine, morning exercise, breakfast, studying, and some games in the evening. Sura followed her own calm rhythm, meditation, reading glowing data scrolls, and sometimes humming in her language. But then, small things began to change. Sura started avoiding him. She spent long hours behind the divider curtain, saying she felt tired. Her skin markings glowed faintly at night, forming soft patterns on her arms and neck. The temperature in the room rose a few degrees even though the climate control was steady. Ethan noticed. One evening, he saw her hands trembling when she reached for a cup of water. "Hey," he said quietly. "Are you feeling okay? You look pale." Her silver eyes met his for a second, then turned away. "I am. Fine. It is only a phase." "What kind of phase?" he asked. She didn't answer. She walked to her side of the room and shut the divider curtain. The faint blue light behind it flickered like a pulse. For the first time, Ethan felt real unease. Over the next 2 days, things grew stranger. When she slept, faint electrical sparks danced along her hair. The lights flickered whenever she stood near the wall console. Even the air purifier gave small static pops. Ethan checked the systems. Everything seemed fine until he found one warning in the local database. Valari biological phase cycle maintain isolation. Exposure to unregulated energy waves may harm electronics. He stared at the words. Biological cycle. Was that what she meant by phase? That night, the hum of the room deepened. The moons outside the window aligned perfectly, one silver, one blue, bathing the dorm in cold light. Sora sat by the window, eyes closed, breathing slow. Her body shimmered like living glass. Ethan approached carefully. "Sura, talk to me. What's going on?" She turned to him, voice soft but heavy with tension. "You should keep your distance, human. This is not safe for you." "Safe? You mean that energy thing?" "I can handle a little static." She shook her head. "It is not simple static. It is the Valari heat." He blinked, confused. "The what?" She looked away. "It is a natural cycle of my species. Every few rotations of the twin moons, our internal energy rises to dangerous levels. We must release it carefully. Usually, our people return to isolation chambers or the healing pools during this time. But the lockdown came before I could leave. Now, I must endure it here. Ethan stepped back slowly. So that's why the lights flicker? Yes. My energy field becomes unstable. It can damage electronics, or minds that are sensitive to resonance. You should stay far from me until it ends. How long does it last? 7 cycles, she whispered. It has only begun. He looked around the small dorm. There was nowhere to go. The door was sealed under quarantine lock, and stepping outside could mean infection or arrest. He had no choice but to stay inside. All right, he said finally. Then we'll figure it out together. Sura's eyes widened. You cannot help me, he smiled slightly. Maybe not, but I can try to make things easier. You helped me when I burned the food and nearly destroyed the cooker. It's only fair. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she turned away, her shoulders tense but voice low. Humans. Always trying to fix things they do not understand. He chuckled softly. It's kind of our thing. That night, the temperature kept rising. The hum in the air felt deeper, vibrating in his bones. He couldn't sleep. From behind the curtain, he could hear her breathing, slow, unsteady, almost like music. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. The next morning, he checked the supply drones through the compad. Food delivery had stopped. The system said emergency resources redirected. They had only 2 boxes of protein packs and half a tank of water left. When he told Sura, she nodded slowly. We will ration. Valari can survive on light and air for a short time. Yeah, well, humans can't, he muttered, forcing a smile. Days passed. The isolation became heavier. The room filled with silence, broken only by the faint hum of her energy field. Sometimes, he saw her standing by the window, watching the moons with unfocused eyes, her skin glowing like molten silver. He felt helpless. One evening he woke to a loud sound, a crash. He rushed to her side and saw her on the floor, trembling, clutching her head. Sparks danced across her arms. The air smelled like ozone. Sura. He knelt beside her. Hey, stay with me. Stay back. She gasped. It's too strong. I can't control it. He didn't listen. He grabbed the climate control panel and lowered the temperature to minimum, cooling the air. The blue light from her skin dimmed slightly, but she still trembled. Talk to me, he said gently. Tell me what you need. Her voice was faint. Balance. I must stabilize the resonance. But I can't do it alone. Ethan helped her sit up. Then tell me what to do. She stared at him, confused, afraid, but then she nodded weakly. Valari can share energy through synchronized breathing, but it is risky. Your body is not designed for it, he shrugged. I'm not designed for a lockdown either, but here we are. Sora hesitated, then reached out one trembling hand. Place your hand on mine, he did. The instant their palms met, a soft pulse spread through the air. Not painful, but powerful. His heartbeat raced. The glow around her body steadied. She closed her eyes. Breathe with me. Match my rhythm, he followed, inhaling and exhaling slowly. Their breaths synchronized. The light in the room shifted, flickering between blue and white, and softened into calm. After a few minutes, the humming stopped. Her trembling eased. The tension melted from her face. When she opened her eyes again, they were clear, bright, like polished metal. She looked at him in silence, breathing hard. It worked, he whispered. She nodded slowly. You stabilized the field. I do not understand how, he grinned, tired but relieved. Maybe humans are more adaptable than you think. She gave a faint smile. Perhaps. They sat quietly for a long while, the only sound the soft hum of the air filter. Outside, the moons drifted apart again. The blue light faded. When Ethan finally stood, his limbs felt heavy, but he smiled anyway. So, how many more cycles? 6, she said softly. He sighed. Then we better make a schedule. Sura looked at him curiously. Schedule? Yeah, he said, stretching. Humans like plans. Helps us pretend we're in control. For the first time since lockdown began, she laughed. It was a small, musical sound that filled the quiet room with warmth, As he returned to his bunk, Ethan thought about that laugh. Despite the fear, despite the strange light and trembling air, he felt something he hadn't felt since arriving on this distant world connection. He didn't know what the next 6 cycles would bring. But he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't abandon her. Because that's what humans did best. Stay. Fight and find a way through impossible things. Outside. The stars shimmered across the sky, and the first lockdown night of their strange partnership came to an end. The days passed slowly, measured in the glow of the twin moons outside the dorm window. Ethan woke each morning to the soft hum of the air system and the faint shimmer of Sura's skin. Every cycle of her body's energy was like watching the tides, unpredictable yet rhythmic. By the beginning of the second week, the heat was stronger. Sura's energy field seemed to pulse through the room. Lights flickered more often, sometimes with sparks jumping from the panels to the floor. The air itself seemed thicker, heavier, vibrating subtly. Ethan stayed calm, though inside he felt the pull of worry. He had read the Valari manuals about the heat, but nothing could fully prepare him for the intensity. If her field spiked too high, it could overload electronics or even harm a human nearby. He tried not to show fear. Every morning he brought water, adjusted the temperature, and made sure her food packs were carefully rationed. Sura, for her part, tried to maintain her usual composure, though the strain was visible. Her movements were slower, her eyes often distant. One morning, as sunlight filtered weakly through the sealed window panels, Ethan entered the room to find her sitting cross-legged on the floor. Her glow was dim, but faint sparks flickered across her hair. "Morning," he said softly, trying not to startle her. She opened her eyes slowly. "Do not say that," she whispered, her voice low. "It is not safe to be surprised." He nodded, kneeling beside her. "All right, I'll be careful. But we need a plan. This energy, it's getting stronger." Sura exhaled, her breath misting in the cool room. "There is a technique. Humans rarely survive it." "I'm listening," he said. She explained carefully. "The cycle can be balanced if 2 compatible beings synchronize. Breathing, heartbeat, energy fields, all must match. If done correctly, my internal energy stabilizes, but a mismatch could worsen the resonance." Ethan paused. "Compatible? Like how?" "Your human system can absorb fluctuations." "We can attempt it," she said, looking uncertain. "You would be affected. Perhaps fatigue, perhaps temporary dizziness, but you will survive." He thought about the locked doors, the isolation, the way the energy pulsed through the room. "Then we do it together." Tora looked at him, hesitation in her shimmering eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said firmly. "We have no choice, and I trust you." "Let's start now." She nodded slowly. The two moved to the center of the room. Ethan placed his hand near hers, close but not touching. He could feel the subtle vibration in the air, soft hum that seemed to respond to his own heartbeat. "Focus on breathing," she instructed. "In and out. Slow. Match my rhythm." He followed, inhaling deeply, exhaling carefully. He could see her chest rise and fall, perfectly in time with his own. The shimmer on her skin pulsed with every breath. Slowly, the sparks decreased. The flickering light steadied. It worked. Hours passed as they repeated the process, adjusting minute differences in timing, feeling the resonance ebb and flow. Ethan was exhausted, but he didn't stop. Every time he faltered, Sora's soft voice encouraged him, "Do not give up." By evening, the energy field had stabilized. The glow from her skin returned to a calm, soft shine, and the air seemed lighter. She looked at him, her face both relieved and thankful. "You are stronger than most humans," she said, a faint smile breaking across her face. "I just didn't want to see you hurt," he replied. The next few days became a rhythm. Every morning they checked the air, rationed supplies, and prepared for her energy spikes. Every night they synchronized breaths, hearts, and energy until the room felt steady and calm. Outside, the lockdown continued. Communications were minimal. Supply drones delivered only essentials, and the corridors of the campus were silent. Ethan and Sura began to rely on each other not only for survival, but for companionship. Ethan discovered more about Velari culture through her stories. They did not sleep like humans. Their rest cycles were linked to energy waves, and their emotions often displayed as visible markings on their skin. Humor, anger, fear, all became visible as faint light pulses. Sora learned more about Earth, too. She laughed at his explanations of baseball, marveled at the simplicity of Earth humor, and often teased him for calling everything human logic. But the more they shared, the more the energy cycles grew unpredictable. One night, as the twin moons reached another alignment, Sira's resonance surged sharply. Sparks ran along the walls, and her glow became so bright it cast long shadows across the room. Ethan grabbed the temperature panel immediately, lowering it. "Stay calm," he instructed. "We can handle this. Cannot control it." She gasped. "It is too strong." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Then let's do it together. Again. Now." They moved to the center, synchronizing once more. This time, the resonance was stronger than before. But Ethan felt something new, a faint warmth in his own chest as their energies connected. The room hummed, but now he understood the rhythm. He adjusted his heartbeat, matched her breathing perfectly. Slowly the light dimmed, the air settled, after what felt like hours. Sura finally exhaled and collapsed softly on the floor. Ethan knelt beside her, supporting her gently. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," he corrected, smiling despite fatigue. The shared experience changed something between them. Not romance, not desire, something deeper. Trust, understanding. The knowledge that survival sometimes required complete cooperation, even between beings from different worlds. Over the next few days, they found small joys amid the tension. Cooking together, reading, sharing stories of home. Ethan taught Sura how to make a simple vegetable stew with spices she had never tasted. She showed him how to manipulate light reflections to make patterns across the walls, a soft, calming effect that helped both of them relax. The routine became almost comforting. Every surge of energy was no longer terrifying. It was just another part of their shared world, something they could handle together. Then came the third week, and with it, a spike unlike any before. Sura's energy field hummed violently, making the floor tremble faintly. Sparks danced like tiny stars along the panels. Ethan felt a wave of dizziness but forced himself to remain steady. "This is the peak," she said, voice strained. "We must synchronize fully, or the system will overload." He nodded, placing his hands near hers. The pulse in the air was stronger now, almost unbearable, but he concentrated. Breathing slowly, matching her rhythm perfectly, he felt their energies align. The lights flickered violently, then steadied. The hum in the air faded, and then silence. Both of them sat on the floor, breathing hard, hearts racing. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You are a remarkable human," Sura said finally, her eyes bright but gentle. "I would not have survived this alone." Ethan chuckled weakly. "Neither would I. You're a pretty tough roommate, too." She allowed herself a small laugh. "Perhaps together, we are." Strong as the days passed, the resonance gradually returned to normal levels. The synchronization became easier, the peaks less dangerous. And yet, the experience left a mark, an unspoken bond that neither of them could name, even when the lights flickered, even when the air vibrated, even when the twin moons aligned perfectly. They faced it side by side. By the end of the fourth week, the lockdown was nearing its end. Supply drones brought larger deliveries. Messages indicated that the Galactic Authority was preparing to lift restrictions. Ethan and Sura stood by the window, watching the moons drift apart. "You handled everything well," she said softly. "You too," he replied. "We handled it together." The room felt different now. No longer just a dorm, not just a locked space. It was a place of endurance, trust, and resilience. A small world within a world where two very different beings learned to survive, adapt, and cooperate. And as the light of the moons faded, Ethan realized something simple but profound. Humans didn't just endure lockdowns. They endured challenges of every kind. And sometimes survival wasn't about strength or knowledge, it was about trust, partnership, and finding calm even in chaos. Sora looked at him, her markings soft and even. "When this ends," she said quietly, "you will return to Earth. I will return to my city, but we will have survived this together." Ethan nodded, feeling a quiet pride. "Then we'll always have that," he said. Outside, the stars sparkled, distant and constant. But inside the small dorm room, two beings, one human. One Valari had created something just as permanent, a shared strength. A partnership tested by fear, isolation, and the strange, powerful cycles of alien biology. For the first time since the lockdown began, they felt a quiet hope. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The days of isolation had stretched into a full month. Outside, the galaxy seemed quiet, as if holding its breath while the lockdown continued. Inside the dorm, however, life had its own rhythm. Ethan and Sura had grown into a routine that was more than survival. It was trust, cooperation, a quiet understanding that both could rely on each other no matter what. Ethan woke that morning to the soft hum of the dorm's air system. Sora sat cross-legged on her bed platform, her markings soft and calm under the ambient lights. She looked more relaxed than she had in weeks. The dangerous peaks of her heat cycle had passed, but her energy still lingered, like a gentle pulse that reminded them both of the challenges they had overcome. "Good morning," Ethan said. Smiling as he stretched, Sura looked at him, tilting her head. "Morning. You have been restless in sleep, human." "Dreams. Just thinking," he said. "About what happens next?" She nodded, understanding more than he expected. They had survived the cycles, stabilized the energy surges, and endured isolation. But soon the lockdown would lift, and their worlds would pull them apart. The intercom buzzed suddenly, breaking the calm. A voice announced, "All dormitories are to be cleared." Lockdown lifted. "Decontamination teams will arrive shortly. Please prepare for inspection." Ethan's stomach tightened. He and Sura exchanged a glance. The prospect of leaving the dorm was comforting, but it also meant leaving the cocoon of safety they had created together. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. Sora rose gracefully, shimmering softly as she did. "I must be," she said, "but I do not wish to leave this room. It is familiar now, comfortable." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, it feels like home after all this, doesn't it?" They packed their minimal belongings, the few data pads, the ration packs, and a couple of personal items they had scavenged during lockdown. The dorm, which had once felt like a prison, now seemed almost sacred. Every corner held a memory of endurance. Every panel bore the faint traces of Sura's glowing energy. When the decontamination drones arrived, they whirred softly across the room, scanning surfaces, checking the air, and monitoring residual energy fields. Ethan watched nervously. One of the inspectors, a multi-eyed Valari official, stopped in front of them. His many eyes blinked rapidly as he observed Sura and Ethan. "Your energy readings are unusual," he said. "You maintained stability through the lockdown?" "How?" Ethan shrugged. "We helped each other," he said simply. Sora added softly, "We worked together." Synchronization, eh? The inspector's eyes blinked in disbelief. He spoke into his communicator, clearly puzzled by the human's involvement. "Humans rarely survive unshielded energy cycles." "You must be." "Remarkable." Ethan didn't answer. He just smiled faintly at Sura, who returned a small, shy smile. They both understood the unspoken bond that had formed between them during isolation was more important than any recognition from outside. Once the inspection ended, the dorm doors unlocked with a soft hiss. Ethan hesitated, looking at the threshold. Beyond it was the corridor, empty and silent. For the first time in weeks, freedom beckoned. Sura walked beside him, calm but cautious. "We leave together?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "We face it together, like we did everything else." Outside the dorm, the halls were clean, the air fresh. Supply drones flew overhead, distributing new food, water, and essentials. Students and residents emerged cautiously, their faces a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Some hugged, some whispered quietly in joy. But Ethan and Sura moved silently, observing and absorbing the first real sights of the world beyond their lockdown room. They reached the transport hub, where shuttles waited for their scheduled departures. Sura's city shuttle gleamed in silver light, ready to return her home. Ethan's shuttle to Earth was parked nearby. Sura stopped in front of her shuttle, her posture elegant, her hands clasped. "This is where our paths separate," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "It's temporary. We'll meet again. I promise." She studied him carefully, her markings softening. "Humans, you are persistent even when you are unprepared. You adapt, survive, and endure. I have learned much from you," he grinned. "And I from you. You taught me patience, focus, and how to survive a heat cycle I never even imagined." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, acknowledging the months of fear, effort, and trust that had brought them here. Then, unexpectedly, Sura shook her head and smiled faintly. "I will not board the shuttle. Not yet. There is more to understand about this connection." Ethan blinked. "More, yes," she said. "Humans endure isolation, fear, and alien systems, yet you remain calm, steady, and reliable. You are compatible in ways my species rarely experiences." Ethan laughed softly, a little awkwardly. "Compatible? You mean like energy stabilizers?" Sura's gaze met his. "Yes, but also, as companions, we have survived together. It would be unwise to part now." He felt a warmth in his chest. This was not about romance, it was deeper. Partnership, trust, endurance, and mutual respect. She had chosen to face the future with him, not because of desire, but because they had shared an impossible challenge and survived. "Then we stay," he said simply. "We face the next cycles, the next challenges together." She nodded. Together. The Galactic Authority personnel looked on, confused but respectful. They had never seen a human interact so closely with a Valari during a heat cycle. But Ethan and Sura ignored them, focusing on the unspoken bond they had forged. The transport shuttles departed one by one, taking humans and aliens back to their cities and home worlds. Ethan and Sura stayed behind in the quiet dorm, which now felt more like a sanctuary than a prison. Days passed. The twin moons continued their orbits, but Sura's cycles were now predictable and stable. The synchronization exercises became easier. They no longer required the same intense focus, but they kept practicing, joined the calm rhythm. During these quiet days, they explored the campus together. Ethan showed Sura parts of the old university gardens, where alien plants glowed softly in the low light. Sura shared stories of her city's towers, its art, and the festivals tied to the twin moons. They laughed, experimented with holographic displays, and found joy in small things, a touch of normal life after months of tension. The lockdown, though over, left a lasting lesson. Ethan realized that humans were adaptable in ways even alien science sometimes underestimated. Sura saw that trust and partnership could bridge worlds, species, and cultures. Together, they had endured isolation, danger, and uncertainty, emerging stronger and wiser. Eventually, word came that travel between cities was allowed again. Shuttles awaited. Supplies had been replenished. Life was returning to a form of normalcy, yet Ethan and Sura chose to remain together a while longer, not out of fear or obligation, but because they had learned that some bonds were rare, forged in adversity and endurance. Beyond any instructions in manuals or rules of etiquette, as they stood together, looking out at the distant stars, Sura's markings glimmered softly, reflecting the light of the moons. Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of quiet pride and wonder. "Humans are remarkable," she said softly. "Not just humans," he replied. "We're a team." They shared a moment of silence, simply observing the universe. The dorm, The moons and the quiet hum of life around them felt peaceful. For the first time since the lockdown began, both felt free, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. The story of that lockdown, the heat cycles, and their survival would remain with them forever. It was a reminder that endurance was more than survival. It was trust, partnership, courage, and the willingness to face impossible challenges together. And somewhere, in the distant records of the Galactic Union, it was noted simply, humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans survive even when the universe itself seems against them. For Ethan and Sura, the lesson was personal and profound. They had survived a lockdown, faced alien biology, and endured impossible cycles together. And in doing so, they had found a quiet strength that would carry them into whatever future awaited together. The twin moons rose once more over Valari Prime, casting their gentle light across the quiet dorm. Inside, two beings from very different worlds sat side by side, calm, content, and unshakably bonded. And outside, the galaxy continued its slow, steady orbit. Unaware of the small but remarkable story unfolding within one small dorm room, Ethan placed a hand gently on Sura's, feeling the faint pulse of her energy. She looked at him, eyes soft, and nodded. "Together," she said. "Together," he echoed. And for the first time in weeks, the dorm was quiet, not with fear, but with calm companionship, and the enduring promise of survival no matter what the stars might bring.